Yes, I am Gismed Fodimami Suma, the chairman and leader of the NGC party in Sierra Leone, the National Grand Coalition Party. The NGC stands for National Grand Coalition Party. Well, as it is with most other third parties, I say third parties because the two dominant political parties, the colonial parties as we call them, are the SLPP party and the APC party. The SLPP is Sierra Leone People's Party, and the APC is All People's Congress. And then APC emanated from SLPP because of the undemocratic practices within the SLPP that was tribally balanced, contrary to the vision of the founding fathers of the party, who wanted to create a nation that is united. So the SLPP was founded by leaders from different regions. That was the vision of the founding fathers of the SLPP party. But after 1967, even before 1967, after the sudden demise of the founding fathers of our nation, the Sir Milton Magai, we got independence in 1961. He passed away in 1963. So he didn't have much time for him to see through his vision that he had for the nation. And from that moment on, they started instituting some undemocratic practices within the party that led to the breakaway of certain individuals within the party, including Sheka Stephen, who was part of the founding fathers of the APC party. So they broke away from the SLPP. They found the APC party, the All People's Congress, and he capitalized on the tribal sentiment that was being pushed within the SLPP and used that to rally the other tribes. So from that on, the nation became divided on tribal line, whereas one tribe is dominating the SLPP party, another tribe is dominating the APC party. Now, they have existed since in the early 60s, mid-60s to now. In fact, SLPP existed since late 50s. So every now and then, other political parties break away from either APC or SLPP due to the internal undemocratic practices that alienate certain individuals. As a form of retaliation, they go on and create a third party. And that has not been as successful as we want to see it. And the reason because most of those third parties that were created emanated from either APC and SLPP. They were equally as internally bankrupt democratically, morally bankrupt, such that the internal practices of those political parties that are called the third parties that are threatening, that were supposed to be challenging APC and SLPP, were more or less similar in terms of internal practice. They were not accountable to their members, not responsive to their members, very undemocratic. So as a result, they did not survive. And most importantly, is because the key power players in either APC or SLPP, depending upon which one is in the ruling party, they kind of use people who are desperate out of greed to kind of create internal rift within the third parties, using institutions of government, weaponizing them against the opposition. Now, this has been the modus operandi all along until 2017, when a former UN executive who was a deputy secretary general in the UN, Dr. Kande Kole Yumkela, decided to vie for the leadership of the SLPP party, because his father was a founding father of the SLPP party. Now, but we come from a minority tribe. His father is from my same tribe. We come from the same village. We are all Sumas, in terms of the last name. But normally when it comes to things like this, we are very resourceful. So, but the challenge we've been facing, because you come from a minority tribe, you always find a challenge to survive within the two big major political parties. So his father was very consistent, which is something a kind of a norm in my tribe. When we say this, we stick to it. So when other people that were key players in the SLPP party were breaking away from the party, when APC took control in 1967, they introduced a one-party system. During that time, everybody was forced to become a member of the same APC party. His father was one of the only ones standing high and refused to change. He was imprisoned several times. He was persecuted several times. He was prosecuted several times. But he stood firm that he will never change from the SLPP party. And now come 2017, his son decided to run for the leadership of that same party. They consider him a stranger. The majority tribe, which is the Mende tribe, they called him, they have a name, they have a description they used to call him in Mende, that is a stranger. So when they go to campaign, they say, don't vote for that stranger. This is somebody whose roots form the foundation of the SLPP party. So, but that was one challenge. The second challenge, the president that was in power at the time, Anesbai Koroma, had seen that this is the Kande's force that he came with because of that UN reputation and the massive support he had from the diaspora and people like us that are independent, have never been part of APC and SLPP, gave him to massive support. So it became a very big threat to the ruling party. So what they did, just as they've been doing with other political parties, the very president in power at the time, Dr. Anes Koroma, financed this current president to challenge Kande Mukela, Madabio, through the primary to get rid of Kande Mukela, just to eliminate him from the race. They found different ways of doing it. Madabio was kind of, I can say, languishing in the UK, broke, had no money. All of a sudden, he was seen in Sierra Leone, pumped with money, campaigning, and vying for the leadership. Now, that was done on the pretext that Madabio had been a military leader in the past in Sierra Leone with a very terrible record. So the military government that he led was NPRC. And we all know what happened in 1996. I don't want to go into all of that. I don't want to prolong this. But what happened was the fact that Anes Koroma was of the opinion that as long as SLPP is having Madabio as their candidate, his party will always defeat him based on the past record of the Madabio. So as a result, Kande Mukela was eliminated. Again, they used the court system to weaponize against him. Because of that injustice, we encouraged him to form a third party. Now, I had seen long before that he was not going to be allowed because I took it from the history of the past because of the tribal sentiment that dominates how the internal practice of the SLPP is being conducted. So I told him that I'm not going to join him in SLPP because I consider those two political parties, APC and IPC, as most terrible political parties for our nation. Since 1961, irrespective of the diamond, the gold, the bauxite, and all the natural resources we have, we are still considered one of the poor. It's because of the bad leadership. So I cannot see myself joining any of those parties. But what I will do is this. Because I believe that they're not going to allow you to have the flag bearership, I will proceed and form a new party to use as a platform when you come. You can use that as a platform to ride on. So I took upon myself, started the process of establishing a new party called the NPD. It took me like 2-3 years because of the threat that third parties tend to bring. So, but I guess the president in power then realized my family relationship with Kande and started picking up that, oh, this guy, he has made it clear on television that he's forming a party, but he's not interested in running for flag bearership. That was a red flag. And then he planted a mole within my party. They arrested me. I went to declare the policy position of my party, had television interviews all over. You know, the press, when your message is very sensational, they chase you anywhere you go. So I was having interviews on television, radio, back to back. Sometimes I had to turn them down because I was saying things other people were not there to say. I was speaking to the corrupt system and how to fix the economy, and that they didn't like. So as a result, I was arrested on trumped-up charges. I was locked up in the central prison for 38 gruesome days. I mean, that was a terrible experience. I became a feast for mosquitoes, lying on the floor in the midst of feces, because in the cell, the prisoners do not have toilet, washroom facilities. So you either have to go to some small corner somewhere and ease yourself, or they have a bucket. So if that bucket is full, that's it. You're on your own. So that's the kind of stench. I stayed 38 gruesome days, but I still did not change. I continued attacking them. When they realized that I was adamant on my position, they denied me access to pen and paper, denied me access to a phone, denied me access to the whatever. But it reached a point, Amnesty International and other human rights organizations became interested. They started coming to interview me. They went to court. The president, which I know is the case, was controlling the court, directly instructing the judge what to do, when to grant me bail or not to grant me bail. But each time I went to court, week after week, I would double down on the same statement I used to make. I said, the only option you have is to kill me, but I'm going to stick straight to these principles. So they found a way to hijack that party from me, created a chaos. But NGC finally, which is the Kandeh Zumkela party, became registered in 2017, towards the end of 2017. Mine became registered before his. So, but because of the moles that they had planted within my party, to find a way to just bribe people, like the secretary generals and other people, they bribe them. So I decided to abandon my party and then work with Dr. Kandeh Zumkela for us to project the NGC party. So NGC party was registered in 2017. 2018, we had an election. Because of the popularity of Kandeh and the massive support that the party had from the diaspora, we were able to secure close to 7% of the vote, 6.7%, 6.9% of the vote. Now the question is, how did Mada Bio pull this off to be able to win in 2018 and become the president when Ernest Krumah was expecting him to be defeated in 2018 because you know his image is terrible in terms of conducting an election? Two reasons. I did a research on that. My research revealed that Ernest was afraid of Kandeh's international exposure. So if he was involved in rigging the election against NGC, that would have been a much more scandalous challenge for him. Mada Bio was eager and determined to become president. So they used the tribal line. The north and southeast of the nation is controlled by the Mendi tribe, and Mada Bio emanates from that region. So within the National Electoral Commission, they were able to find a way to enable the Mada Bio camp, the SLPP party, to rig the election against the NGC party. So the government will not be blamed. This is opposition rigging against opposition. But guess what happened? Because the rigging pattern was such that if they are ready to count the vote, they kicked out NGC ballot pulling agent out of the counting process, using the police and the military to intimidate them in those same region, and then they dumped out all the NGC ballot. So the only ballot that were to be counted was supposed to be the ballot for the APC and the SLPP. Unfortunately, for Ernest Krumah, they extended the rigging to his own party too. So the same way they eliminated the NGC ballot is the same way they eliminated the APC ballot. So as a result, when they announced the first result, the first round, APC realized that their vote had disappeared in the entire Southeast. They know how the NGC vote disappeared, but they didn't know that it was going to be extended to their own party. So their own became kind of a... So he tried to use the police, which is usually the case, to go after the Mada Bio Stale Center. Luckily, the current president of Ghana, John Mahama, was in Sierra Leone as an electoral observer. He was called in by, I think, the UN or African ECOWAS to go intervene. So he looked into the matter and insisted that the police should not interfere with what is happening with the SLPP camp voting. So that led the two parties to go into a runoff. NGC was eliminated because our vote count was 6.9%, which would have been like 20-25% if the matter was not being rigged in the Southeast. So what resulted in that case was a situation wherein the two parties had to go into a runoff, APC and SLPP, which APC was not expecting. And usually, as has been the case in the past, once the ruling party goes into a runoff, the wind is already away from you. So the opposition is more likely to win. So when they went to a runoff, the rest of the other people that were opposed to SLPP came and joined the SLPP to defeat the APC. And that's how the SLPP came into power in 2018, eliminating the NGC. So we went back and tried to recalibrate and restructure our party for moving it forward.
In terms of moving it forward, because the story is very synonymous with the story of opposition parties in the African continent. We've just concluded elections in Tanzania. We've lost an opposition figure right here in Kenya who has almost a similar story to the one you're telling. Mm-hmm. Is there shrinking space, or would you say the space of opposition parties is shrinking within African democracies?
Now, the democracy in Africa is at a defining crossroads. During the early 90s, at the dawn of multi-party pluralism, when the likes of Kenneth Kaunda ushered in multi-party democracy in Zambia, it sent shockwaves across the continent, motivating other countries to consider multi-party practice in their own country. That moment we used to celebrate is under serious threat now. Not only the political space is being threatened, there has been a usual pattern of rigging elections at the ballot box. But now, elections are rigged before the elections are conducted by weaponizing state institutions to go after opposition parties. Opposition parties are not only facing challenges, democracy is on trial in Africa. The same pattern that I have mentioned that is happening in Sierra Leone, when the electoral commissioner, the political party regulating commission, is being weaponized. And they've weaponized it against me to the point that what they do, this is how they do it. The political parties regulation commission is, by constitution, is required to ensure that political parties practice democracy in their internal practices in line with their party constitution. Now, failure of which anybody can challenge whatever thing that happens in your party to the Political Party Regulation Commission. What happened to me is this. Our party was supposed to contest in the 2023 elections. Dr. Kande Koloyumukela, he's the one we relied on to become the flag bearer again. Now, he, for some reason, started bromancing with the president, with the ruling party. Then, he came and tried to convince us to go into a coalition with the ruling party. Many of our members refused. I was the deputy chairman and leader at the time. When we conducted the elections in 2022, I was elected, overwhelmingly elected across the nation, as the deputy chairman and leader of the party. The chairman and leader had to resign. He was, to many of us, he was forced to resign because intimidation and a lot of things that happened. As there was a time he was even arrested for just going on television and saying things. He was locked up in the CID, Central Investigation Department. He was there for a couple of days for nothing, just like that. They just got him arrested and trumped up charges because there was no charges to hold him on, to charge him on to court. They eventually, but all of that had an impact. And he was in the mid-60s to late 60s, perhaps in his 70s. He decided to just, of course, the internal threat that he was also facing in the party, which I'm going to speak to later, he decided to pull out. So the burden to restructure the party was now on me. I came back to step in as the acting chairman and leader of the party. This same proposal was presented to me that we should go into a coalition with the ruling party. I was very skeptical. But I trusted Dr. Kande Koloyumukela. I believed in him. Many of our members, those in the diaspora across the country, some of them resigned. They were angry about it. But I decided to take the risk on two reasons. One, the opposition, the stronger opposition, APC, had no alternative that we were offering the nation, except threat of violence, because they were, bent on being as revengeful as possible. they had no control over their grassroots. And their grassroots can go into rampage. Even with the ruling party, they went after the police when, of course, I can understand. There was so many suppression against the opposition. Many of their members were beaten. Some of them were jailed, and so on and so forth. So it reached a boiling point. The grassroots could not hold it anymore. But despite that, no one from the leadership of the APC party stood up to kind of calm the situation. Because irrespective of our political differences, we should not resort to violence. And that's my position. So I was worried that if these guys are emboldened, the grassroots are emboldened to the extent to unleash violence on the nation, when they are not in power. If you give them the opportunity to go in power, then that will be terror. So I decided to buy into the idea of a coalition with the ruling party. This is a terrible story. We got into that coalition. And the second reason, I was seeing this as an opportunity to bridge the division within the country. Because based on the agreement, we're going to form a coalition government. I was hoping that having failed during the time he was a military leader, Madabio, failed his first term, I was thinking a rational man that cares about the nation would have said, this is my best opportunity to unify the nation. So my thinking was that my hope and expectation was that he was going to use this as an opportunity to create a coalition government that comprises of the best talent in his party, the best talent in our party, and even the best talent in the opposition. So we unite the nation and move the country forward because we have so much to do. But he didn't do that. Instead, after we joined the coalition, we campaigned with him, we withdrew our candidate, so we didn't file any presidential candidate in 2023. We withdrew most of our parliamentary seats, and we won. The coalition won. Unfortunately, he negated on every item of the promises we made in that coalition, even though we had a written agreement. They never followed through on it.
And it's the story of political parties in Africa. But I wanted to explain to us, particularly when it comes to elections. Are elections a matter of competition, or it is a rigged exercise, even before the opposition parties engage in any election?
As I said earlier, yes. Political party, multi-party pluralism, especially when it comes to the opposition, it's not only a challenge, it's on trial. So the despotic leaderships across Africa, when you think of what is happening in Togo, Tanzania, Uganda, they know that part of the best way to rig the elections against the opposition is to suppress the leadership of the opposition, to pump money against division factions within the opposition, and most importantly, to stifle the democratic space. So what they do, they rig the election before the election is conducted. And exactly that is what is happening to me now in the NGC party. Because when the president negated on his promise to fulfilling the agreement on the alliance, Kande Koloyo Mukela, whom we depended upon, who actually encouraged us to go into an alliance, broke away and cross-carpeted into the president's party and went back to the SLPP party, abandoned us. So many of us considered him the one that betrayed us, not the president. Because if he had not agreed with what the president was doing, there's no way the president would betray us. He betrayed us and accepted positions within the party and went on television, had a press conference, trashed our party, saying that he did not regret leaving the party, and just ignored us completely. Man, that was a sad moment.
It's like a very painful process.
Very painful process, because not more so for people like us that has Western connection, because my family is based in the US. My family is based in the US, so I am kind of resourceful enough to be going in and out, fly to different places. I can take care of myself. But there are so many other struggling mothers and fathers, young men, young women, that were crying, calling me, Chairman, is this true? Is this true? Crying. So I was left with the burden of consoling disappointed people, members of our party. So I was succeeded in consoling them. Many of them were asking that we don't consider ourselves part of an alliance, because nothing was agreed to was kind of respected. As a result, chairman, we need to declare publicly that we're not part of an alliance. I said, well, let's do it in a more constitutional approach by calling a National Executive Committee meeting such that we can be able to allow the National Executive representatives from different parts of different districts, different regions, different constituencies to come and make the decision. I don't want to make the decision on my own. Guess what happened? After we spent thousands and thousands of dollars putting the meeting together, paying transportation. The great Raila Odinga is one of the examples that most of us in opposition should learn from. The one unique thing about Raila Odinga, he was always consistent. He was more in the interest of unifying Kenya, more as opposed to dividing Kenya. He serves as an example of the level of resilience that each and every one of us should take inspiration from. The one thing that happened in Kenya that inspired the rest of us in Africa is the decision of the Supreme Court to nullify an election. That is a rare situation in Africa. So as far as I see it, we used to consider Ghana is the bedrock of democracy in Africa. Kenya is another bedrock of democracy in Africa. And we're also looking at Tanzania until the despotic leadership that is now ruling the situation now in Tanzania. So Tanzania has gone off the rail. So Kenya and Ghana, we are appealing to every Kenyan. We are appealing to the political leadership of Kenya, political leadership of Ghana. Please don't fail Africa, because those are the only stronger pillars that we have. Well, I will add South Africa to that too. South Africa is another pillar. But they are setting examples that the rest of us should follow. So we are appealing to the leadership of Kenya, leadership of Ghana, leadership of other African countries, South Africa, to please hold on to this process. Because the other threat that we are facing in any society in which the democratic system is corrupted, the economic system will be affected. So the pro-Western style or pro-market concept that we, the central right political parties, consider the right way to reform the economy of Africa is under threat right now. Now, many of us admire what is happening in Burkina Faso because of the transformational leadership that is being provided. But the democratic space is not encouraging, because what is happening, because of the geopolitical division in the West, the Cold War has come back. But this time, instead of it being a Cold War between America and Russia, it is now a Cold War between blocks of countries. And Africa is now being used as the playground to fight this war.